Huggy Holly and the Magic of Bodily Autonomy, or We Told You Not to Do That. When I was 6, bad things happened to me at the hands of someone I had been told I could trust. Part of the aftermath of that situation was lots of therapy and an introduction to a strange and wonderful thing called bodily autonomy. I was told that I, even as a child, could tell other people that I did not want them to touch me. If anyone touched me without my consent, it was okay for me to tell them no, and it was okay for me to be as loud and emphatic about this as it took for them to get the message. I could even push them away if they persisted. Adults might be upset if I said no, but that was not my problem, because adults are expected to control their emotions and actions. At first, the only people I would allow to touch me at all were my mother, my maternal grandmother, and my aunt, Mom's sister. It took a while, but eventually I was able to expand the list. Family members who received my permission were aware of the implications of my trust and treated it as a serious privilege. People who were allowed to touch me at the time of this story: Mom, grandmother, aunt, brother, grandfather. People who were not allowed to touch me at the time of this story: every fucking body else on planet Earth. This is relevant. Now there's a substantial age gap between me and my brother, about 14 years. I was quite a surprise. At the time of this story, I was about 8 years old. I was a small kid. Even now, I'm under 5.5 feet tall. I was a major tomboy, and my mum kept my hair trimmed into a shoulder-length bob because I was terrible at taking care of it. My brother had been dating a girl for a couple of years, and they decided that they liked each other well enough to get married. His mother-in-law-to-be was interesting. Very, very touchy-feely, huggy-wuggy, smoochy-woochy. Why won't you get the ever-loving fuck out of my goddamned fucking personal spacey? Thus the nickname of Huggy Holly. Upon seeing pictures of me, she squealed that I was just the cutest thing she'd ever seen, and she couldn't wait to meet me and give me a bye hug, and pinch my cute round cheeks, and ruffle my pwetty hair, and kiss my whittle rosebud mouth. My brother told her no. No, don't hug my sister. Don't pinch her cheeks. Don't ruffle her hair. Don't kiss her. Don't touch her at all. Don't even ask to touch her. If she offers you a hug, that's one thing. But do not, under any circumstances, touch her without her express permission. Huggy Holly could not wrap her head around the idea that a child could tell an adult not to touch them and expect to have their wishes heeded. My brothers mentioned that he must have tried to explain it to her a dozen times. She just could not, or would not, understand. During the course of wedding planning, there was a fair amount of communication between my family and my brother's future in-laws. I was brought up as a topic on several occasions, and every single time, my mother reiterated my brother's warnings. Huggy Holly would always say, "Yes, I remember, but..." And as we all know here, "but" is shorthand for, "Watch how fast I invalidate what I just said." In this case, the "but" was always followed by weirdly rapturous comments about how adorable and darling I was, and so on. Moreover, she seemed to have unclear ideas of how this in-law thing works, because she kept talking about how much she was looking forward to getting another darling little daughter that she could spoil with fancy tea parties and dress up in pretty princess outfits, like she'd done with her own daughters. My mother must have so much fun dressing me up like a little doll. I remember my mom laughing until tears came into her eyes during a few of these phone calls, because she knew exactly what kind of semi-feral wolf child she'd raised, and no matter how much she tried to gently explain this to my brother's FMIL, the information never ever sank in. This woman believed with the holy fire of a fanatic that I was some kind of living, breathing Precious Moments figurine. She'd be rabbiting on about this coochie-coo shit, while my mom was gazing out the back door, watching me roam the backyard, eating live ants and mud, while building elaborate stages for the deadly battles of my Thundercats and He-Man, figures out of sticks, grass, rocks, and whatever mud I didn't eat. When I could be induced to hold still long enough to be cleansed of accumulated filth and clothed in strange human garments, I was reasonably cute, aside from my well-developed resting bitch face, but I constantly longed to fling off the constraints of civilization and go roll around in the dirt and play with the mangiest stray animals that a major urban area could produce. I once tried to convince my mother that a huge, evil-eyed sewer rat was top-flight pet material and had bonded with me, and I should totally be allowed to keep it. She disagreed. The rat was returned to its natural habitat and went back to catching and eating pigeons in the alley behind our house, but I have seriously digressed. The day of the wedding rolled around. Because I loved my big brother and had opted to gracefully tolerate his chosen spouse until such time as I developed actual liking for her, I cooperated with the efforts of my mother and grandmother to make me look presentable. I was wearing my very best outfit, which was a frilly pale blue dress trimmed with white lace, and yes, it made me look adorable. We disembarked from the car and went into the church to mill around in the pre-ceremony confusion. Suddenly, out of the crowd, this strange woman in a cerise satin dress, which emphasized a bust that needed no extra emphasis and a hairdo like an explosion in the blonde factory, came swooping at me with her arms flung wide, emitting a sort of tea kettle noise. I backstepped fast and said, "No," loudly and clearly. But on she came, her fuchsia lips scrunching into a kiss pout that resembled a hemorrhoid pillow, burping out something about the sweet little princess. My entire assembled family, brother, mother, aunt, grandmother, grandfather, one uncle and his wife, all shouted, "Don't," at the same time. It was probably the most organized as a group they've ever been. My family is mostly Irish, which means we mostly fight with each other, except for my Czechoslovakian grandfather, who always watched the fights from a peaceful, safe distance. My uncle, the person physically closest to the brewing disaster, tried to intervene, but the weird lady was moving like she'd been fired out of a ballista, made of bad decisions. And frankly, that particular uncle isn't a fast mover, even when not faced with a high-speed idiot. Secure in my knowledge of bodily autonomy and armored with the assurance that defending myself from unwanted contact was the right thing to do, I was prepared to act. So, as Huggy Holly stooped upon me like a Haast's eagle upon a moa, single-mindedly focused on hugging the child she'd been repeatedly told by several different people not to hug, I took action, squared up, planted my feet, and hauled both fists back at shoulder level. "Don't touch me!" I screamed at the very top of my lungs and double-punched my brother's imminent mother-in-law squarely in the tits. Anyone who has ever been punched in the tits knows that this is not a fun experience. Possessing a balcony that one could do Shakespeare off of, Huggy Holly had a fair bit of upholstering, but her momentum combined with the small contact patch of my 8-year-old fists, concentrating the force, resulted in a not insignificant impact. She reeled backwards, arms flailing Kermit fashion, and my uncle just barely missed, so he claims. I suspect intentional action, but that's fine by me, catching her as she toppled onto her bee-satined ass, incidentally crushing the gigantic stupid frilly bow on the back of her dress. Having defended myself adequately, I shot into the cluster of my family members and hid behind my grandfather, the short, cheerful, smiling, gentle old man, whose heirlooms included a Doobie Luger that he acquired from a German officer who didn't need it anymore. In Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia, you may draw your own conclusions. My uncle, who honestly looked as if he'd rather kick the woman, helped Huggy Holly back to her feet while she began to gasp and sob, clutching at her bosom. "Why did she do that?" she demanded. My mother calmly said, "We did warn you not to touch her, several times." Huggy Holly wailed, "But she's so small and pretty eye." Huggy Holly wailed, "But she's so small and pretty eye." "You know, dynamite comes in small decorative-looking packages too," my grandmother remarked, then turned to my brother. "Okay, where are we sitting?" That was literally the first time I saw this woman. She did not improve with further exposure.